Welcome, everybody. I am the loud little ducky, and today we are going to go over Kerry Roberts' testimony from day 2. And she was the second witness on the stand in the Karen Reed retrial, or Karen Reed 2.0, as some call it. And Hank Brennan did her cross. I don't know if Hank Brennan's going to be doing everybody's cross or direct. If Hank Brennan is going to do the whole entire trial with nobody else, just like Lally did in the first trial, or if Hank Brennan will allow Lally or Laura McLaughlin to get up there and speak at all. Who knows? And so before Kerry Roberts takes the stand, the Commonwealth plays a clip, and the clip is from the ID docuseries that Karen Reed did, and the interview took place on June 15th, 2024. And she said, "Do I actually remember saying, or do I remember people telling me that I hit him, or did I say, could I have hit him? Closest thing I could have said was, like, I know I said I hit him, but did I say it as many times as they said I did?" Um, and so not a great clip for her. But the thing is, even if she admits to saying, "I hit him," is she saying those words, "I hit him," in that way? Or did she say, "I hit him"? Like, "Me? I hit him?" Like, is she responding to somebody? Um, or is she saying, "Could I have hit him?" And they're just omitting the "could of." Or "Did I hit him?" And they're turning it into, "I hit him." So that's something the defense is gonna have to do. These clips that Karen Reed did with the media are not going to be that great for Karen Reed. Um, I don't know why she did it. I don't know why her lawyers allowed her to. Maybe her lawyers didn't want her to, and she was like, "No, I'm doing it." And so they're like, "Okay, but we're gonna be there." Um, so yeah, we'll see how these play out if her words come back to bite her in the butt, because they could. Her very own words shown in these clips out of context of the entire interview and that segment that included that, can it come back and bite her? Will that be the thing that sends her to prison? It's something we have to ask herself. When if she would have just kept quiet and not done any media interviews, the Commonwealth would not even have this. Um, all right. So Kerry Roberts is a friend of John O'Keefe's. She became friendly with Reed. Um, John and Kerry knew each or yeah, John O'Keefe and Kerry knew each other through their kids. And so Kerry Reed does not go she is not one of the ones that went to CF McCarthy's or the waterfall. She was not involved in that drinking partying the night before. She comes into the picture at around like 5 a.m. when Karen Reed frantically calls Kerry Roberts and wakes her up with a phone call. And Kerry said that all she heard on the phone call was, "Kerry, Kerry, Kerry, John's dead." And then she hung up. She says that Karen was so loud that it woke her husband up. Um, and then she told Karen or Karen told her that we drank a bunch last night. Um, Kerry said, "You don't need to be driving, you're gonna get a DUI. Go back home to John O'Keefe's niece," because John O'Keefe's niece was at home. Mind you, I think John O'Keefe's niece was, like, 14 at the time, so she's old enough to be home for a little bit. Some would say all night, but or a day, but, I mean, to each their own, but I would say for at least a couple of hours, she's fine. Um After Karen called her, Kerry called the non-emergency line for the police department asking if they had picked up anybody to see if they knew where John was. They called the hospitals looking for John. Nobody knew anything about John at this point. They did play the non-emergency call that Kerry made in court. The roads were treacherous. She said it's about a 4-minute drive from her house, Carrie Roberts' house, to Jen McCabe's house. And so Carrie drove to Jen McCabe's because Karen was going to Jen McCabe's or was already at Jen McCabe's. And Jen McCabe was going to help Karen go look for John. So Carrie met them. And then Jen and Karen were in Karen's vehicle. Jen was driving. And then Carrie was in her vehicle, and they were, like, on Bluetooth, um, like, phone call, like, I guess the whole way there, and they went back to John's to drop Karen Reed's car off. While they were at John's, they went inside to see if John was there, and then he wasn't there. Um, they Karen left her shoes on, everybody else took their shoes off, but Karen went running through the house with her shoes on. And if I hear one more person say that, "Oh, she had her shoes on because she knew John couldn't get mad at her because she knew he was dead." I'm sorry. Having your shoes on in a house that you don't normally when you're frantic and you had been drinking the night before, shoes aren't really your top priority. Um, Wearing shoes inside the house, it does not make you a murderer. So, go somewhere else with that. Um But he wasn't there, and so they eventually go to 34 Fairview. But Jen or Karen thinks that she left John at the waterfall, and is what she's thinking or remembering or something, and Jennifer McCabe says, "No, I saw you pull up in front of my sister's house," which is Nicole Albert's house. The McCabes and the Alberts are related due to the the sisters. Um And on that Bluetooth call on their way back to John O'Keefe's house, she says that Karen was screaming about her tail light and was like, "My tail light, my tail light," you know. And so let's see what else. All right. Um, they show Carrie a picture of the which one is it? The Sally Port? I don't know if that one's it. Okay. She says that the tail light was cracked and missing a piece. Missing a piece is not how I would describe Karen Reed's tail light. I don't know that anybody would actually describe that as missing a piece. Like maybe a section is out, but No, I would say, like, a huge chunk of her taillight is missing, or it's shattered, like, it's completely busted out. Like, I would not describe what the taillight looks like as a piece missing. It makes no dang sense. Oh, they showed her the first picture they showed her was the one from 8 a.m. from the dash cam, and says and Hank Brennan asked Carrie Roberts if, "Is this what it looked like when you saw it that morning?" And she said, "Yes, just not as much like, not all that but there was snow on it," or whatever. Or, yeah, it looked like that. Um, which is something Lally didn't do with the other ex or with the witnesses last year. He wasn't like, "Well, is this what it looked like? Is this what you're describing?" Because that would've been great because we would have at least had that part locked in. Instead, we're just it was cracked with, like, a hole in the middle, but that's a piece missing now. I don't know. Everybody's been talking to everybody, we know that. Um, so they go to 34 Fairview. She says Karen wanted to go to 34 Fairview. I'm not sure that Karen wanted to go to 34 Fairview. I think Jen said, "No, you pulled up to my sister's house, like, do you think that's where you left him?" And I think Jen came up with the idea to go look at 34 Fairview, and Karen was like, "Okay, yeah, let's go to 34 Fairview." Karen wasn't even thinking about 34 Fairview necessarily, she was thinking about the waterfall. So, if Karen said, "Let's go to 34 Fairview," I think Jen McCabe put it in her head. But that's just me. Y'all can think what y'all want to. Um, she says while they were driving, the view was horrible because, it was dark and it was, like, snowing pretty hard, um, and all that. Karen was in the back seat, leaned up, and Carrie Roberts was driving, and Jennifer McCabe was in the passenger seat, and Karen was, in the back seat, but kind of in between the 2 front seats, like, leaning up towards them, and, Carrie had never been to 34 Fairview, and so Jen was like, "Oh, it's by Bella's mom's house," which is interesting because Bella's mom got brought up one time in the last trial. Bella's mom is going to be mentioned way more in this trial, and I'm not so sure that Bella's mom likes to be put in the middle of this. Now, Bella is friends with John O'Keefe's niece, and Bella's mom and John O'Keefe apparently dated for a little bit, or they talked, maybe went on a date a little bit, whatever. It didn't work out. So, I don't know if that's and Carrie Roberts knows who Bella's mom is and who Bella is. And so Carrie is now saying that Jen brought up Bella then. But last year, Bella's mom, the only time it was brought up is when Jen was giving directions to John O'Keefe when Karen and John were on their way to 34 Fairview because they hadn't been to 34 Fairview either. So now she's getting brought up in these 2 times that Jen has mentioned Bella's mom instead of just giving directions. Was it to make Karen mad? Was it to make Karen jealous? Was it like, well, maybe he walked to Bella's mom's house? Like, I don't know what the point is. I don't know when Bella's mom was actually brought up in real life. I just know Bella's mom is now in 2 conversations as opposed to 1 conversation compared to last trial last year. Um, And then when they pull up to 34 Fairview, Karen sees John on the lawn, and she's like, "Let me out of here," like, kicking the door, "Let me the F out." Um, and they say that Karen Reed makes a beeline towards John O'Keefe's body. Carrie and Jen are like, "Where?" Like, "We don't see him." I don't know if they were necessarily looking for him per se, but and maybe Karen didn't technically see John, but she saw, like, a mound of snow that looked like a body maybe? Some say she made a beeline because she knew exactly where she left him last night. I don't know. You know why we don't know? Is because nobody took a fucking picture of where John was. And maybe we could see the mound of snow that was on him, or maybe what it would have looked like in the dark when people were there, or even in the daylight. We could get an idea of how it would look if you were driving by. But we have no picture of where John actually was. And Carrie says when she got out and, you know, and saw where John was, that she did see a mound of snow that was the length of a body. So that was the end of day 1. And so she came back on day 2, which was yesterday, and they continue the direct by Hank Brennan. They start off with the tail light again. And so he's Carrie Roberts says pieces were missing. Piece was missing. And he showed her now the Sallyport photo, which is interesting because the 8 a.m. picture and the Sallyport picture don't quite look the exact same. Similar, but not the exact same. And so we now have a witness that says, yes, the way it looks in the Sallyport photo, when which was done, that picture was taken on February 3rd, is the exact same way that the taillight looked when she saw it the night they were looking for John O'Keefe at like 5, 6 in the morning. And so now they have somebody saying, yep, that's what it looked like. Now we will see if there's some independent witnesses that have nothing to do with the McCabe's or the McAlberts, or sorry, not the McAlberts. That's what people call them, as the combined name is the McAlberts, McCabe's and the Alberts. Um, we'll see if the tow truck driver thinks that it looked that way. People that are independent, not tied with this MSP, not tied with Canton, doesn't know any of the McCabe's or the Alberts or anybody. And if theirs is different and they're independent and not in this in crowd, in group where everybody knows everybody, it might be a problem for the Commonwealth. We will have to see who the jury believes more, though. Are they going to believe that all these people got their story straight? I mean, they admit to creating a timeline, and then the independent people are just trying to say something opposite. Like maybe they shouldn't be believed. But we'll see as the trial goes on. All right. Um, they showed a video of Jen, Karen, and Kerry arriving to John O'Keefe's house when they dropped off the card before they went in the house. Oddly, it does not have them leaving the house on Ring video. where they supposedly looked at the taillight. Oh, and she did say that she noticed it, um, when they were at Jen's house, she noticed Karen Reed's taillight being cracked. We were wondering why she hadn't seen it before Karen pointed it out to her at John's house, because Kerry followed Karen's car, so she should have been able to see that taillight real clearly. That wasn't talked about in the first trial. It is now. So she's saying, "Yeah, I did see it before." So closing that hole and that question. She was saying that the taillight had something sticking out of it that could snag a jacket, um, or something. So trying to explain, yeah, there was something sticking out that could cause scratches, maybe. Trying to say, "Oh, yeah, the taillight could have caused those injuries to John O'Keefe's arm." Um, John's face was fully covered by the snow. She had to get the snow off of his face. Um, she says that John's arms were by his side. Both of them were just laying by his side, so he was just like a pencil laying in the snow. Seems that seems odd to me. That just seems very odd. They only had bruising to his right eye, had the goose egg above his eye with the laceration above his eye. Um, she said she didn't really see much on the left. That's what she's saying now. I don't know if she fully remembers. Although seeing one of your good friends laying there basically deceased, that might be an image that's burned into her mind. But has it been clouded by everything else that's been going on for, like, the last 3.5 years? I don't know. That's the problem with some of this stuff. There's been so much happening in this case that I don't know if everybody fully remembers things or if they've just implanted memories into their brain, not realizing that those aren't their actual memories. Um, and so let's see. She got blankets to wrap around John O'Keefe's head. Blood had gotten on them, which is interesting bec- um, because that would mean there was, if it was dry, well, I mean, dried blood could still get on there, right? I don't know that it could be dried blood if he's laying in the snow. That would, to me, would keep that blood wet. Um, and the reason I'm talking about dry versus that is because our first witness, the firefighter Nuttall, he said that John's back of his head, like, his hair was matted with, like, dried blood in it. And so, I don't know. Um, John O'Keefe was cold to the touch. She did not see glass on his face or sticking out of his face. The reason that was asked is because Karen says that she removed a piece of glass out of his like, from his nose, and then his nose started bleeding, which if it was bleeding, he was still alive. Um she talks about that Karen Reed was, frantically screaming, running around, screaming, "Jen, Jen, Jen, Carrie, Carrie, Carrie." They showed video of that. She is pacing around like a mad woman, and you can hear her. They have the dash cam on, and so the dash cam is inside the vehicle. The windows are rolled up, but that inside microphone from the dash cam can pick up words that Karen is screaming and saying outside of the car from, like, feet away. You can pick up stuff she's saying. She's so loud. When she was at Jen's house yelling, um, Jen McCabe's husband, Matt McCabe, woke up because he heard Karen screaming outside. He's like, "What the hell is that?" But you know who didn't wake up? Brian and Nicole Albert. Karen's screaming didn't wake any of them up. Karen was screaming, "Did I hit him? Is he dead?" When the paramedics were around is what she was saying. So Kerry says something different than what the firefighter said. Firefighter said when, they were around that Karen said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Kerry just remembers her saying, "Did I hit him? Is he dead?" and screaming that multiple times. And Kerry would tell Karen, "No, I don't think you hit him. Like, why would you think that?" Um, John was put in the back of an ambulance. John was in an accident. Oh, Carrie Roberts called Peggy O'Keefe, John O'Keefe's mom, and told John O'Keefe's mom that John had been in an accident, and Peggy O'Keefe was screaming, "I can't do this again," because Peggy O'Keefe has already lost one of her daughters, and then her daughter's husband died 3 months later in 2019, I believe? No, maybe it was 2013. I don't know. Several years before this. No, it'd be 2013 because kids were very young, and that's when John O'Keefe took his niece and nephew in, is when the niece and nephew's parents both passed away. So that's how John has the kids. And so John O'Keefe's mother is like, "I can't do this again." Like, she's gonna lose another one of her kids. Like, and I feel for her in that way. I can't imagine. And then the fact that these kids have lost their biological parents and then their uncle that took them in and raised them basically and was like another dad to them. These kids have lost their guardians twice. It's so hard on these little kids. Um, mm, Carrie says she remembers that Jen and Karen were put in the back of the cruiser at one point. There was no video or audio of them in the cruiser. Um, be nice if they were put in a cruiser that had, like, dash cam where you could hear what Jen and Karen were talking about, how Karen sounded. That would've been great. None of that. Don't have any of that. Um, they said, when they got to John, there was no signs of life. There was, like, they couldn't find a pulse. Um, Carrie and Karen started CPR. Um, Karen did mouth to mouth. I guess Carrie was doing the chest compressions until the firefighter paramedics got there. Um, then she talks about him saying, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" Um, Carrie tells her they're working on him. Eventually, Karen and Jen are out of the cruiser. Um, Carrie gave her phone number to police, and she and Karen left, and she was gonna because Carrie was gonna go pick up, John O'Keefe's parents to take them to the hospital so that John's parents didn't have to drive. She says it was because they do not have a four-wheel drive vehicle, although, Peggy said they do have a four-wheel drive vehicle, so I don't know. Maybe Carrie didn't know that they did. Um, and then Karen was on the phone with John O'Keefe's sister-in-law saying, "I think he's dead." Karen Reed calls her mom when they're driving and says, "If anything happens to him, I'm going to unalive myself. Um, you will have to take care of the kids." Um, and then an officer calls Carrie Roberts back and says, "Do you have Karen with you?" And, she was like, "Yeah, I do." And they're like, "Well, we just got a call. Her parents are worried about her because she was talking about unaliving. Um, can you bring her back? Because they want to section her." And it's a section 12. And basically, they want to put an involuntary psych hold on Karen Reed because of her unaliving comments that she made. Um, is it good that they were looking out for her well-being? Yes, that was, because you never know if she's just saying that out of losing her longtime boyfriend, the man that she loves, or like, and that she's gonna actually do it, or if she's just saying it because she's just in shock and grieving. Some people say, I can't live, you know, I can't live without you, all this stuff, but are they going to do the things? And with the amount of shock and panic and the words she was saying, they wanted to make sure that mentally she was okay and she wasn't going to do anything to herself. So I can understand as a concerned parent. Do I think that her dad probably, I don't know if he fully regrets it, but I think he wonders, where would this case be had I never done that? Just because they got a BAC out of her, blood alcohol level from this particular thing. Um, and so at one point also, Carrie Roberts picks up the blankets that she had from John O'Keefe's head and John O'Keefe's phone, which was lying on the ground where his body was because his phone was underneath him and it was still laying there in the grass. So Carrie Roberts picked up his phone and put it in her pocket. Um, they get back to 34 Fairview. Karen went in the ambulance. They they did not want Karen Reed to have her purse because there was some meds in it that they didn't want her to take. Um, so they didn't want her to have it. Um, and a question I have is, you have this officer or, this guy laying on the lawn, and people know. I mean, Jennifer McCabe's sister lives here where this body is. Why did nobody go get the police officer that lives in the house? Be like, "John's on the lawn, like, we're on the phone with 911, but can you get out here and help us? Because you know how to deal with this stuff. You deal with this all the time. We don't know what we're doing. Like, get out here and help us with this." Like, why did nobody go get the police officer that was in the house? the first responder that is there to protect and serve. Why did nobody go get him and say, "Get out here and help us with this"? Like, you're a police officer, you know what to do. Like, it just seems odd to me. And then the part that I find odd about him laying there with his arms by his side like a pencil is if he was hit by a car and his arm his arm has these scratches that are going like this. They don't go like this, and they're saying that his arm is what caught the tail light, and that's where these scratches came from that are going like this. They're not going like this, so if his arm was out and it would scratch it this way, they're parallel. I mean, if y'all have seen any of my other videos, you know what John O'Keefe's arm looks like. Um, if not, you can see the you can find the picture really easily of his arm, and then he's flung backwards, right? This is the Commonwealth theory. He's flung backwards like 30 feet, and he lands on his back, and he hits his head on the frozen hard ground. Like, his arms aren't like this or, like, trying to catch himself or something. His arms are just at his side, like he just landed like a pencil and just was like, boom, straight back. Like he did a back flop basically when he flew. He just flew like a pencil and landed. Or when he fell, his arms just landed and he was just la I don't feel like his arms would just be by his side and his legs being straight. Like his legs are straight, he was straight, from my understanding. I don't think that his legs were in any weird way, but his arms were apparently by his side. I just don't know if you've been flung, if that's how you land. Oh, gotta move. All right. So, continuing on direct, they made her a major witness this time. She was not, I mean, she had some stuff to add in the first trial, but she wasn't as big last year. Um, So, it talks about after the ambulance left, that's when Kerry picked up the phone. They showed a video of, oh, is this when you went over and picked up the phone? Um, there was no snow under John O'Keefe. It was just grass. Let's see. Then Kerry Roberts hands the phone to one of the first responders around she says around 6:12, 6:19. We end up finding out that she picked up the phone at 6:15, so, she didn't have it too long. She didn't know how long she fully had it. She talked about the driving was horrible and, the roads were making her slide a little bit, which is another interesting point because if everybody else's vehicle can glide and slide on the road because of the weather conditions, why couldn't have why could Karen Reed's vehicle not have had her tires spin in snow or on ice? Um, why couldn't she have slid backwards or forwards? Everybody else can slide, but Karen Reed cannot slide or spin tires. Nope. Her vehicle does not do anything like that. Her vehicle acts like it's dry. Um, let's see, what else do we have? Oh, that was the road when she was driving to go pick up, John O'Keefe's parents. Um, Karen Reed called from the ambulance. She called Kerry from the ambulance, and, John O'Keefe's mom was there, and, Peggy asks, "What happened?" And Karen Reed says she left him at a party, and John O'Keefe's mother was like, "You just left him there?" Um, the man is, like, in his mid-40s. "Yeah, I just left him there to drink with his friends." Or you just left him out in the middle, like, you just left him in the snow? Like, you didn't escort him in the house? Like, "No, I just dropped him off at the thing. I don't go drinking or partying every time he does." That's an odd comment. Peggy O'Keefe says she made that comment too. Um, see. John O'Keefe's dad said that's enough, she's been through enough, and then they hung up, and then they they see John O'Keefe at the hospital, and now she describes that it's not just the right eye that is bruised. Now the left eye is that way. She says they look blood-filled, and, they look like raccoon eyes. Um, so they're both bruised and blackened. Um, Still the golf ball sized goose egg on the right side. Now both eyes were, like, purple from, like, looking like it has a black eye. And something that I cannot stand that Hank Brennan did, Kerry Roberts was one of the ones from the first trial, um, that had genuine emotion. You could tell that her and John O'Keefe were really good friends, and that talking about her good friend's death, it upset her. And she was already upset again in this trial. Hank Brennan did not need to do this with her. He could have done this with the police or firefighter paramedics or maybe medical staff. But Hank Brennan showed her a picture of one of John's autopsy photos of his face. We didn't fully get to see it, but the way it was positioned on the podium, the cameras kind of picked it up. And she was like, "Is this what his eyes looked like? Is this what his face looked like when you saw him?" And of course, "Thank you for showing me an autopsy photo of my friend." And that gets her even more upset. Like, that's him purposely wanting to make her upset so that there is sympathy for her. That is sleazy. I don't like that. I wouldn't like it if the defense did it either. It was just uncalled for. Um, and then when they left the hospital, um, Kerry drove Mr. O'Keefe, and Paul O'Keefe, which is John O'Keefe's brother, drove Miss O'Keefe back to One Meadows, which is John's house where everybody was at. Probably because that's where the kids were. And Carrie did not go inside at that point. She went home. So she didn't go inside John's house then. She did go in and was there the next day, but not that day. She just dropped him off. She was kind of just being a taxi and being a a kind person. Um, she went over there to be there for the family the next day. Her and Jennifer McCabe, who didn't really know each other before the night of this incident, they had become real close. They might be like besties now. Her and Jennifer McCabe would talk often. Um, John O'Keefe's mother, Peggy, asks Jen and Kerry Roberts to make a timeline of what happened. This should not be going on. It should not be going on. We're not making a collab of our stories. And this is what I mean by like false memories or somebody else's memories that you think are yours. Is because when they put together the timeline, some of what's in that timeline is Jen's story, and some of it is Carrie's story and what they both could remember or get details from everybody else to put this timeline together or to get the story straight, you could say. And they need to write down everything that happened and when it happened. And what's funny is that they're asking somebody that wasn't even there the night before. She was there when the body was found, but that was it. Why are they having somebody give a timeline that wasn't even really there the whole night? She was just there so she knows the same parts that Jen does. So I don't know why they need to collab. Is it because Carrie's now a witness to this and they need to make sure that they pull her in and that she's on their side? Um, or is it because those two were there when John O'Keefe was found? So them two need to figure this out. Um, I don't feel like Carrie has much to really put in the story except for the way things were when John was found and then, dealing with Karen afterwards. But Carrie has no information about the night leading up to this incident. Um, they get into talking about that Carrie knew Officer Lank because Lank's daughter is friends with her daughter. Like I said, everybody knows everybody. Um, they went to that officer's house like the next day after this incident. Jen McCabe was with her because Jen McCabe was not leaving Carrie's side after this incident. Like, don't let Carrie be by herself, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that Jen is just trying to comfort her because they were in this together now. They got bonded over this. Um, it could be nefarious. It might not be. I don't know. Something stinks is all I know. And I don't know that it's on Carrie. I think Carrie has been influenced. She agrees. She admits to being influenced by that timeline and Jennifer McCabe's things. That those things aren't some of that stuff is not what she actually experienced. Um, and then when Carrie went to drop off her daughter at Officer Lank's house, Lank's wife came outside and got into Carrie Roberts' car with Jennifer McCabe and Carrie Roberts. And she was in the car for about 45 minutes. Jennifer McCabe supposedly went in the house to pee. Don't know if that's all she did. Lank's in the house. Link's not outside with them. He's in the house with the kids. You think Jennifer McCabe was maybe talking to Link because Link is one of the officers that was on scene? Jennifer McCabe all up in his thing and just was like, "Oh, I have to pee." She might have peed too. Just interesting. And, it was a long conversation. She says they didn't talk about details of the case. I don't know if I'm buying that. An incident just happened. Her husband was there. Maybe her husband wouldn't fully tell her all the details. She's just like, "Oh, I'll get it from the girls. We can just gossip about it." Like, she says she was just checking on, like, seeing how they were. Well, it doesn't take 45 minutes to check on somebody and see how they were. And they could have been talking about life stuff, but there's no way they didn't talk about this case or what had just happened the day before. Um, Kerry, interesting enough, had contacted the district attorney's office where Michael Morrissey is. She talked to Trooper Buchnick, and she also talked to victim's advocate. We'll get to how often on Cross. She was interviewed that day that they found John at her house. Um, she was also interviewed another time at Jen McCabe's house. What she should have been told on January 29th was do not talk about this with other witnesses. Do not talk about it with other people. We do not want you getting your stories straight together. But they were all talking to each other. Everybody was talking to everybody. And the reason you're not supposed to talk to other witnesses in the case is because it can mess up your statements, your memory, and what you recall to make sure that you're not reporting what somebody else told you. You're just reporting what you know and that you're saying it separately and not in a group with people. She says when she was at Jen's that they separated them into different rooms and questioned them. Um, then they played the video of the dash cam with the dash cam has the shittiest wipers. I really hope those wipers got replaced shortly after because God, they were awful. And that's the one they used to be like, see how hard it was to see? Those wipers didn't do nothing. Like, they just didn't work very well. Um, in the video, in one of the videos, I think it was the one that they showed the firefighter Nuttall. He looked closer to the firefighter kind of in that view. In this one that they were showing Kerry Roberts, it didn't look as far back as the flagpole. It looked closer to the road, just near, like between the road and the flagpole, but more close to the road. Again, we don't know because there was no measurements and there's no picture in relation to where John's body was. No picture of this location. It's just it was somewhere in here. It's just a guess. Makes no sense. All right. So that was and Karen asks for a prayer when they were standing around. um I don't know whether it was before John O'Keefe left or after, which is interesting because that was a huge part of Nettles' cross examination where he's like, I did not say that she was praying over him. I did not write that, but he mentioned it in his report or he said it in grand jury testimony or something. But now he's saying, no, I didn't say that. I don't remember that. That didn't happen. And Kerry's like, "Yeah, they did pray." So that one's already been, you know, who's lying? Who's telling the truth? Kerry or the firefighter? All right. Then they go to Cross. Now, Kerry Roberts was not Cross last year. They did not think what Kerry had to say and the amount of emotion that she had to say, that nothing she really said really hurt them. Granted, when they crossed or when they had Kerry up there, they also didn't know at that point about the visit to Officer Lank's house, because they probably would have then, but they didn't know about that yet because the Commonwealth hid it from them, or Lank actually failed to fill out a report about it, and then they didn't hand it over until trial or mid-trial or something after Jennifer McCabe and Kerry Roberts had already testified. So they probably would have crossed then, but they made sure to cross this time. And the cross focused on how many times did you talk to the DA? She says, "About 50." Why are you talking to the DA that much? Why are you talking to Michael Morrissey that much? That's a lot of talking. Then she says, "Okay, what about Trooper Buchnick?" And I think she said about 20 for Buchnick. And then the victim's advocate, she said between 30 and 40. Um, and interestingly enough, when Jen wanted to know things, Jennifer McCabe wanted to know things, because Kerry Roberts had a rapport with the victim advocate. Jen was like, "Hey, can you ask the victim advocate this?" And Jen McCabe would tell Kerry things to ask the victim advocate. Jen McCabe is a very, very busy bee, very nosy. I bet Jen McCabe would have come outside of her house if it was on her in her lawn, cause she wanted them nosy neighbors. She would be. All right. Now something they did last year, and it seems like it was planned. They wanted to get this in there so that it could be like, "Oh, bad Karen, bad people with that are on Karen's side. We're the victims." John O'Keefe is the victim in this, but they tried to get in the witness intimidation again. Last year, they had several that were like, "Oh, we were being harassed. We were being intimidated." Um, Kerry Roberts was like, mentioned witness intimidation. It was shut down real quickly by the judge. Um, but at least one got it in, and it wouldn't surprise me if Jennifer McCabe tried to get it in as well. I will say, though, that Hank Brennan, the special prosecutor for the Commonwealth, he, in his direct, tried to be really careful when asking questions to make sure that he didn't accidentally have them slip witness intimidation, those words in. I do think he was being really careful with that. So I will give props where it's due. I don't like Hank Brennan that often, but I will say he was being careful there. I call balls and strikes here. I am not going to say that everything the defense does is great and that everything the Commonwealth does is bad. I'm not going to vilify every single witness. And I'm not going to praise every single witness. Um, She talked about Jen went in to use the restroom at Lank's house. Um, they corroborated their statements for the timeline. A little bit of what Jen said and remembered, and a little bit of what Kerry remembered and said. Um, and then, and Alan Jackson was doing the cross of this witness. And they get into, did you hear Jennifer McCabe ask Karen Reed, or did you hear Karen Reed ask Jennifer McCabe to Google about hypothermia or how long it takes to die in the cold? And Kerry says, no, I didn't personally hear it. I didn't hear Karen say that. And then Jackson brings up, well, didn't you in your grand jury testimony, you said that you heard it. So did you hear it or did you not hear it? She's like, I didn't hear it personally. It was told to me. And so a big thing yesterday was that everybody was like, oh, Kerry Roberts committed perjury. She should go to prison. Um, I I don't necessarily think that. It's gonna be an unpopular opinion maybe, but the way I took it, she says she misunderstood the question, and the question was, um, what, if anything, did Miss Reed ask Miss McCabe while in the back of the cruiser that you heard? Well, Carrie wasn't in the back of the cruiser with them. So automatically, we know Carrie Roberts could not have heard Karen ask Jen to Google. And it's really interesting that this is the time that this Google search was going to happen, is when they were in the back of the cruiser. It would have been great to have audio in that car that they were sitting in. Then we would know what really happened then. But that's non-existent. So I think last year when she was asked, and at the grand jury or whatever, when she was asked by Lally, did you hear Karen ask Jen to Google this in the back of the cruiser? Or had you heard this? I think she was thinking that she had heard from Jen that when they were in the back of the police cruiser, Karen had asked her to Google, hypothermia. So she did hear it, or she heard it from Jen. So when, the prosecutor asks her, what did you hear? Did you, what was it? Because the heard was the word missing. Well, in the back of the, that you heard. Well, she heard from Jen that this happened. So technically she did heard it. She did hear it. She just didn't hear it personally with her own ears when Karen, so many K's, when Karen asked Jen this. I don't think it's perjury. I do think she could misunderstand the question. And I think because when they made the timeline, Jen McCabe made sure she put that little Google search in their little timeline. Oh, we need to put in the timeline that Karen asked me to Google about hypothermia. I don't know why that was important to put in there. Why you're putting in your evidence. Why not just put together a list of events that that happened that got him there? Not, "Oh, she asked me to Google this. When they take my phones or if they look at my phones, they're gonna find these Google searches. I need to put this in the timeline." I don't know. Jen McCabe was thinking about those Google searches. Alright. And so Kerry admits that her testimony was influenced by Jen McCabe's, you know, by Jen McCabe's statements and things. The timeline they created together. She is thinking some of her things or some of Jen's things are her things, and they're not. It's false memories. Um, she says she did see Jen McCabe on her phone, though. Don't know if that was when she was Googling something. Um, and she admits that she technically, what she said to the grand jury was technically false. She didn't purposely lie. I don't think she actually purposely lied. That's just me. Um, I think it was important to get her to say, "No, I didn't actually witness that," which comes down to Jen saying it versus Karen saying it, instead of Jen is saying one thing, Karen saying another, but Kerry is saying what Jen said. Now it's still a she said, instead of they saying she said. Um, she did talk to the Commonwealth about, by Commonwealth, I mean like prosecution team, like the attorneys for the Commonwealth, uh, maybe the police or the district attorney's office or her victim's advocate. All that is part of the prosecution team, kind of, about John's mom replacing the Ring camera at John O'Keefe's house. Um, and that they did replace the Ring camera at John O'Keefe's house with permission from the Commonwealth. Now, the defense pointed out, "Oh, so, we couldn't have made sure that the camera was facing the exact same way and everything for, like, reconstruction purposes or to test it." No. But the thing with the Ring stuff is it's a little bit different than the Sally Port, because the Sally Port is controlled by the police officers in that. Ring, while, yeah, the camera records things, those videos are on, like, Ring's storage, and you can get that information and stuff from Ring itself. So, it can be a little bit different, um, but, yeah, the Ring footage of certain things, it John's Ring camera didn't pick up or whatever that was in the driveway. Um, I don't think it's as big of a deal, with that camera being replaced as it is, the the police footage, that camera being destroyed. Um, then, Hank Brennan gets back up to redirect and clarifies, the what if anything did the defendant say at one, and she says at one point she didn't know what happened. Um, the police department took Kerry Roberts' phone, which they did. Um, they looked at her phone or something. They didn't do a full-fledged, like, extraction or do much with her phone. I think they got the call logs mainly off of John O'Keefe's phone. Um, and then it was funny because, Hank Brennan did a a Freudian slip that he shouldn't have, and he talked about his question was, "When you were being interviewed," like, he was fixing to say influenced, "When you were being influenced," and he was like, "I mean interviewed." No, that was correct. When she was influenced by Jennifer McCabe? What questions you got about that? Oh, you don't want to oh, you mean interviewed, when she was being interviewed. I mean, was she being influenced in one of those interviews since it was at Jen McCabe's house? I mean, was it an influenced interview? It was a funny Freudian slip. Um, I don't know if the jurors caught it. I thought it was funny. Um, but they mainly try to, like, push out this, like, "Oh, I didn't lie about my testimony, and, you were trying to be truthful." And then, Alan Jackson got up and recrossed her and talks about the, "Did you hear it?" And she says she misunderstood the question, the technically lying. Um, and she's like, "I just misunderstood Mr. Jackson." And he's like, "Well, that's what you say now." Um, and the that was the end of Kerry Roberts. And so then they played a clip right after that. And this clip was Gretchen Voss's interview. That happened on June 20th, 2023. And it is Karen saying, "When my car was seized," says something about at John's house. Oh, at John's house, there were a few pieces of taillight missing. I told Carrie while we were there, to look. And this was before they went to 34 Fairview, and she showed Carrie and was like, "Look what I did to my light." And she was like, Karen was worried about it because she thought maybe there could be an electrical short, circuiting, and the bulb was showing, um, with the snow and the rain, and, like, maybe the circuit or something getting, like, wet. Could it affect that thing causing, like, a short or something? And then she says that she picked pieces of the plastic out of the tail light and dropped them in John O'Keefe's driveway. Some of the red plastic was missing. So, thing is Karen doesn't say that her tail light didn't have any damage. She says it was cracked. And it is cracked from her backing her vehicle at 5 in the morning before going to Jennifer McCabe and meeting up with Kerry Roberts. She hit John's Chevy Traverse that was in the driveway. And that's when she says she cracked it. And she's saying that she threw pieces in John's driveway. But nobody talks about there being pieces in John O'Keefe's driveway. Is that because somebody gathered those pieces from over there and then brought them over to 34 Fairview? I also talk about that in a video that when I go over the taillight stuff. I will try to link that video with the pictures of the taillights, at different times during the day. Oh, excuse me. Um, that way you can kind of see what all I'm talking about and my theory of maybe where those plastic pieces that Karen Reed is talking about end up. But that is it for Kerry Roberts. I am going to try to break these down witness by witness so that the videos are shorter. Some of the longer witnesses are going to be longer videos. Shorter witnesses will be more trimmed down. But that's going to be it for this one. I will see you in the next one. Hit that like, subscribe, turn that notification bell on so you can see all the recaps of the witnesses that are coming in the Karen Reed retrial. Bye.
They still don't get it.